Hi, everybody. So I am here, and we are, me and my friend AJ, are going to be talking all about Zootopia. We're getting down nitty gritty, so this is a spoilerific video. So if you haven't seen Zootopia, don't watch this video, and then come back, watch the movie, and then come back and watch this, because we will be going into detail of the film. But AJ, do you want to introduce yourself?
All right, I'm AJ. I guess I am AJ. I promise. But there's not really a lot to say about myself. I write for Rotoscopers.com, and I was actually on their podcast this past week. So yeah, that was fun. And I'm just a big animation fan, and there's that, I guess.
Yeah, AJ got got in the big leagues this week on the Rotoscopers podcast, and I'll put a link down to that podcast if you want to check it out. It's really good. We're both patrons. We both really enjoy hearing what they have to say, but I thought that it would be fun to kind of go more sort of nitty gritty into the story, some of the messaging, some of the other things than I've seen anywhere else as far as Zootopia. And we'll talk a little bit more, though, sort of broad, and then we'll get more into the particulars. But so the first thing I thought we'd talk about is sort of the history of anthropomorphic movies within Disney. You had Robin Hood, The Rescuers, Mr. Toad in the Adventures of Ichabod, Mr. Toad, The Great Mouse Detective. You even have Goofy and Donald and characters like that. What are some of your favorite anthropomorphic Disney films?
I think you really mentioned all of them. I guess Robin Hood is probably my favorite, but I was kind of surprised by Zootopia's trailer because I think they took like a very specific, not specific, but a very detailed definition of anthropomorphic. Like I always thought of it as like whenever an animal talks, it's anthropomorphic because you have to change what the animal looks like, or it's going to look weird to see them talking.
Right.
Know? So, like to me, movies like the Aristocats and the Jungle Book and stuff like that are also anthropomorphic movies. So, I guess if you were going to include those, I guess Robin Hood would still be my favorite. I love that movie a lot.
Yeah, like I wouldn't include Lion King as anthropomorphic, even though technically they are talking, but they're not. I don't know. I always thought there was sort of they're not pretending to be humans in Lion King.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's where I would say the difference. Even a movie like Madagascar, to me, they're still like, they're not like wearing clothes and stuff like that, like as they are in The Rescuers, or even in Cinderella, there's some anthropomorphic in the mice. I mean, I guess yeah. I don't know. So who knows where the technical definition is, but that's what I think of when I think of anthropomorphic. I think of more Great Mouse Detective, things like that. And I think what's interesting about, like, I don't consider Home on the Range anthropomorphic because they just look like cows the whole time.
Yeah,
they're not like in clothes. Maybe the clothes is the big thing for me. I don't know. But yeah. I think that you have to, if you're going to talk about Zootopia, you have to talk about Chicken Little a little bit. Have you seen Chicken Little?
I have not. No, except for like one teeny clip of it.
Yeah.
And I think I've had my fill.
Yeah. So it was the last anthropomorphic film that Disney has done, Walt Disney Animated Studios, and it was a disaster. I mean, it's a bad movie. Some of the character designs are okay, but it's really mean-spirited. The characters are just kind of hateful and awful, and it's just, a lot of it is just weird. It doesn't make any sense. Like, they have this in the middle of the movie, they have this Indiana Jones clip, like with humans, like with clip from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you're like, what is going on? It's very weird, and they kind of cobbled together, basically like John Lasseter came in right around when that film was being worked on, and Meet the Robinsons, and like he was horrified by what he saw, and like he just did whatever he could to like cobble together something that would work, and evidently when he came into Walt Disney Animated Studios, it was a dejected, depressed place, like he talks about in Creativity Incorporated. Like everybody was just miserable. They don't like working there, and so I think that you can see a lot of that when you watch Chicken Little.
Yeah.
And it feels like something sort of cobbled together because you have these three different storylines within the movie that are all kind of meshed together, and it does, like, 1 minute it's a sports movie, and 1 minute it's a school bully story, and then the next minute it's an alien movie, and it's just a mess. And I think that we can safely say that the Disney has redeemed itself from Chicken Little.
Yeah, I would say so, even having not seen it.
Yes. So I was a little bit nervous when I saw the trailers. I think that's why I never 100% got on board with the trailers, because I felt like I just felt like, oh, is this just going to be a whole bunch of puns? Like, are we just going to get jokes about, I don't know, let's say jokes about giraffes having long necks? Like, you know what I mean? Like, certain animal jokes, like, could be really uncreative. And so that was my worry. And you definitely had that in Chicken Little, I mean, even from the title, Chicken Little, kind of a thing. And, then I hear the character names, Judy Hopps. I hear, kind of things like, oh no. But I have to say, going into it, just to sort of give like my overall thoughts of the film, is I thought it was just great. I loved it. I thought it exceeded my expectations. I didn't have super high expectations going in, but it definitely exceeded my expectations. I thought it was really funny. I thought it was beautiful. I really liked I thought that there were layers of messaging within the movie, because everybody's sort of focusing on this prejudice message as the main message. But I felt like that there were actually layers of messaging, because you have like a bully message, you have a never giving up message, you have a like using fear to manipulate and control message. All of those things were kind of talked about within the movie, and I really thought that was very good. And I kind of felt like, for me, that I know that people get really upset when people say that something is made for children versus made for, animation is for kids. Yeah. But I felt like the messaging in Zootopia was for children, where the humor was for the adults, for the most part. And what I mean by that is, I felt like that the messaging, as far as the prejudice messaging and some of the other things, there are some holes in sort of we'll talk about later on, but I really thought they were trying to teach something for children, trying to teach children a lesson, versus like the humor with like things like The Godfather and stuff like that, like references, that's more for adults. Like, yeah. Kids haven't seen The Godfather, so those are some of my initial just sort of base thoughts. I was really dazzled by it. I thought it was so much fun, and I've seen it 3 times, and I really enjoyed it. So what about you? What are your sort of thoughts going into it, and sort of your base thoughts coming out of it?
Well, you know that I was looking forward to this movie before, because we did another video about the 2016 animated releases, and I mentioned that this was the one I was most excited about. And I've been kind of on board with it from like the first synopsis, because I'm like, oh, cool. So basically they're doing an 80s buddy movie, except with animals. I'm good with that. Yeah. And it was that, but I like that it was a lot more than that. And I think that's why I came out not disappointed, because I was worried that I was overhyping myself. Right. And I came out not disappointed because it was that 80s action kind of buddy movie for like I don't want to say dumbed down, but kind of toned down for kids. Because if you tried to do one like Lethal Weapon for kids, parents would sue Disney. I'm sure. But I like that. I like what you said about the layering of the messages, and I guess I didn't really notice that at first, except for the one. Well, I noticed the stereotyping prejudice message, but especially the one about. But I did notice the one about using the fear to control. And I don't want this to become like a political video. It reminded me of certain people in politics right now. Like that's one thing I remember specifically thinking. But
yeah,
I also really liked the way the film kind of conjured up kind of a sense of wonder in me. And I guess we'll get into that a little later on. But there are certain scenes, like I guess real quick, like the scene where Judy is first going into Zootopia on the train and Shakira is playing and she's looking around. And I was kind of feeling the same way her character was feeling like, wow, this is really cool, you know? And this is really different. So
that's probably my favorite scene in the movie is that monorail scene. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. And I think it really helped for me. I've seen it not in 3D and I saw it in 3D. And I actually liked it better in 3D because, and normally I'm not a 3D person, but it just was so immersive. It wasn't a 3D where things were like, you know, at your face all the time. This was one where it just made you feel sort of like you're a part of Zootopia, which was really, really cool. And so let's get started talking about the movie itself. And I do have if anybody is watching, we have 3 viewers. I do have the Q&A set up. So if you want to put in any questions, please do. So, okay. So we start out the beginning of the movie with Judy as a child. And she is in this play, and she kind of gives us the history of Zootopia. And I thought that was a really kind of a clever way to kind of introduce this world that they have, you know, sort of without it feeling like so much exposition, that it, you know, because it was sort of worked into this play, and it kind of immediately presents Judy as this very likable character, and so there's a couple of messages that I also saw at this beginning scenes. You definitely get the bullying message. You definitely get a little bit of the prejudice message. You get the never give up message. And you get the discussion of dreams with Judy and her parents. And so, I don't know, what stood out to you sort of in those opening segments between Judy and Gideon, the bully, and the school play, and talking with her parents, all that kind of opening scenes?
Well, I really I thought the opening scene with like the school play was like really, I almost said crafty, that's not the word I meant. It was really skillful, I guess, because it set up kind of, I guess, the biggest theme, like right away. And it also set up the world with Zootopia, and it also set up a couple of jokes that they call back to later. And I really liked how they did all that in that one small scene, because that school play isn't that long.
Right.
And it was the first time I laughed out loud in the movie, and I laughed out loud a lot in this movie, which is actually not something I do a lot in the theater for whatever reason. Maybe it's because there's other people around, but I don't know. But I laughed out loud a lot in this movie. And then,
Me too.
And then from a screenwriting standpoint, I really like this scene where she fights Gideon, the fox, and he scratches her face, like, and that's where she's like determined, like even more determined than before, you know, to become a cop and stand up for the downtrodden.
Right.
And it reminded me of a screenwriting book I've written, because I'm an aspiring screenwriter, called Save the Cat, is what it's called. And the Save the Cat moment in a script is when you have the hero do something, help someone, or do something noble to help make them more likable, to get you on board with like the protagonist. And I thought, wow, that was a really good Save the Cat moment, because you see that Judy is a compassionate person. She wants to help others, and she's determined. And they did all that in one scene, and so I think that was the scene where I really started to like Judy.
Right. Well, and just her not also the conversation also with her parents, you know, that basically they're trying to be sort of pragmatists, and she is clearly a dreamer, which is such a likable trait in your heroine to have. That, you know, that she is never going. Yeah, I think she says, "You don't know when to quit." And she says, "The one thing you got right is I don't know when to quit."
Yeah.
And it's just really, really, really likable. And one thing I wondered about when watching the film is, why do you think that they picked the animals that they picked? Like, you have farm animals, like you have your pigs and you have bunnies, but and then you have the Sahara kind of, you have Arctic animals, and you have African, your polar bears, and you have your, you know, your zebras and your giraffes and stuff. But you don't have any dogs, you don't have any cats, you don't have any sort of traditional domesticated animals. And I was just curious, why do you think that was?
I think I don't really know, but I guess I could guess that. I guess it's just to help make things more exotic, you know, because I felt like Zootopia was like a totally unique world. They wanted to show us something that was like totally unlike anything we'd seen before. And
Yeah.
dogs and cats are something that we see every day, you know, typical house pets. And so I think that having like all these exotic animals from like all these different parts of the world that we don't always see was just a part of making Zootopia like something totally different.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, obviously none of us know, it's just speculation, but I thought it was sort of interesting that the animals that were the most sort of familiar to the average moviegoer aren't in the movie.
Yeah.
So there's also, of course, people pointed out there's no birds and there's no reptiles. It's just mammals in the story. And you do see because people say, well, what do the predators eat? Well, we know that they do eat some animals in the movie, because when they get to Tundra Town, you see a fish market. It says like fish market, and then there's like a blubber expo or someplace like that you see. So clearly they're eating fish. So, you know, I guess there's certain
Yeah.
You got to give them a little bit of leeway here. I mean, one thing I also thought was sort of interesting was they, you know, they're living in Bunny Burrow, and yet her school clearly has all of these different races, I guess, within the, you know, you think it would be all bunnies in Bunny Burrow. It's kind of interesting.
I think,
especially if one family has 275.
That's true. Like, and I don't know, this is just, I'm sure this is probably just me, but I think the word Bunny Burrow, like that name, kind of conjures up the idea of like a small town to me. And I wonder if that's why I picked it, because I got a very strong, I think this is just me, very strong Superman vibe from it. I kept thinking Smallville and Metropolis, kind of that comparison. I don't know, and I think maybe the names had something to do with that, because, and of course, Superman does it very on the nose. There's Smallville, and then there's Metropolis.
That's true.
And it's not
I didn't thought of that, but I can totally see it. Yeah, I can totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think the name helps contribute to that smallness, that small town feeling, I guess, that they want you to get from that place.
Well, and clearly, Gideon is supposed to be, you know, the redneck of the small town, the closed-minded guy. And what's interesting to me is, I have to say, with the messaging of the movie, is that my strong, and we won't get too political, but it is funny that my strong Republican friends, my strong conservative friends, have had issues with the messaging, and my strong liberal friends have had issues with the messaging. And so, you know, it's like, oh, poor Disney, they just can't win when they try, I think. But I feel like that both sides are overthinking it.
Yeah.
In their own way. This is the movie that was made, as far as the messaging, was made for children. I'm sorry, like, don't calm down. Okay. So anyway, so next we see Judy saying goodbye to her parents, and she's getting ready to go train, and they give her the fox repellent. And this is kind of a strange thing, I felt like, in the movie, that everybody seems to hate the foxes. It's sort of weird, because like Chief Bogo, later on, he says, as if I would believe anything from a fox. So it's not like the predators believe like foxes either. And like nobody likes the foxes. The elephants hate the foxes. Like it's just sort of weird the way they did that. And like why, it's sort of weird that fox repellent even exists. Like why wouldn't there be like a lion repellent, or it seems like of all of the, or just a predator repellent or something like that. I don't know, like sort of a strange. Did you find that a little, what do you think about that?
I think that is interesting. Like I never thought about that until just now when you mentioned it. but I think, except for the fact that fox repellent made me think of that 60s Batman movie with the shark repellent. Oh, yeah. But that has nothing to do with what Zootopia is trying to say. That's just my weird mind and how it works. But anyway.
Yeah, poor foxes.
I know. But I think they did fox repellent in particular because of the scenes that happen later on in the movie. And we'll get to those, like at the press conference and stuff. Mm-hmm. When Nick sees what she's carrying. I think that wouldn't have been as powerful if it had been just a general predator repellent.
Right.
But it's specifically for what he is. And I think that really was just kind of an extra twist of the knife that the filmmakers wanted to get in to really drive that moment home.
Right.
And I think that's the reason why it's a fox repellent as opposed to that's a general one.
Right. Well, and you have Gideon as also sort of the bad fox. And so, yeah, maybe they earned their reputation. Yeah. I don't know. And also skunks. Evidently, so in Zootopia, skunks are still bad. Yeah. And foxes. Nobody wants to be poor foxes. Okay, so then we see Judy going into Zootopia. You see Tundra Town, Sahara Square, Rainforest District. And we already talked about it a little bit. But what do you think of the world building in the film?
I thought they did really well. Like, there's an interview. Again, I'm going to plug rotoscopers.com. But there's an interview with Clark Spencer, the producer of the film there. And he talks about how they wanted to make sure that everything seemed logical to the people who came in. Like he talked about, they were thinking, how are we going to do Sahara Square and Tundra Town right next to each other? And they came up with the idea of like the giant air conditioners, and how an air conditioner works is it blows cold air out one side and hot air out the other. And so they figured, hey, wait a minute, there we go, basically. And so I like how it was like realistic, I guess, or practical. And I just thought it looked really cool. I like seeing the juxtaposition, that word is so hard to say, of like all these different environments like right next to each other. I think that was the coolest thing about it.
Yeah, I do too. And just, it's one of those things that felt so rich in that, like, there were so many little details. I've seen it 3 times, and I still, like, there's so many Easter eggs and little details, like, within each shot, which I always appreciate. Like, that's one of the things I love about Finding Nemo, for instance. That you can look in one little corner, there's coral, that you would never notice, or one that it's just so rich and deep each shot. And I feel like this is probably the most rich Disney film that certainly has come out in the last 20 years as far as backgrounds and settings.
Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah.
It was really, and like I said, even especially in the 3D, it was just so immersive, and you felt like you were a part of this world, and it was so beautiful. And you definitely got the feeling of that this was a special place of Zootopia.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And the music too helped a lot by Michael Giacchino. It just, and that song by Shakira, who I'm not a Shakira fan, but I liked the song a lot. I thought that it was really just, I don't know, immersive. It just helped you feel part of where you were.
Yeah.
So,
like, and I am a Shakira fan personally, and I think like usually I really notice Michael Giacchino's scores. Like I really like his style, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it as much in this one, but maybe that's just because Shakira was in the movie. I'm like, yeah, Shakira. But I really like that song, and I really liked her character, like Gazelle. I liked her character design a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, if Shakira was a gazelle, that's really what she would look like. You know, I think they got that look down pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too, and they use her just enough. I felt like if there had been 3 songs or 4, then it would have been like, oh no, but there's just one song, and she's only in the movie for very brief section. But okay, so Judy arrives at ZPD, and and she meets Clawhauser is the first character she meets, and some have said that this is Disney's first gay character. Do you agree with that? What do you think about Clawhauser as a character?
I liked him a lot. He's kind of the character I relate to most. His personality is the most like my own.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I didn't really get that gay vibe from him personally. I just thought of him as like a really nice guy, and why does a nice guy have to be gay? Is my question for the media. He just seems like a really nice, friendly, kind of jolly guy, And I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into the messaging, but I think like that was also part of the messaging, because that's the way you think about those desk sergeants, at the police department. They're always like these chubby, kind of jolly guys in the movies, Mm-hmm. And I think that is to like someone like Chief Bogo also, who's like this really hard-nosed chief, and so it's like those stereotypes that we're used to seeing from movies. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it embraced sort of classic buddy cop type tropes, but did it in such likable ways. Like it wasn't, because I'm not the kind of person that everything in a movie has to be super original as far as story or plot or whatever. That if you have people that I like, if you have characters that I like, if you have a story, if you have a world that I like, then I don't care that I've technically seen a character before, or I've seen a story before. And so, yeah, I agree that yes, a lot of the buddy cop elements are tropes, but I don't care.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me at all. I don't really, if he's gay, that's cool. If he's not, that's cool. I just thought he was a fun character. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
So, if people, it's kind of like, when I went to see Lois Lowry, the author, and she was talking. Somebody asked her if if the character of the Giver was symbolic of Jesus Christ, and she said, "If that's what it means to you, then that's what it is." And so I think that that's kind of true for a lot of things. If a kid watching it, if that's what it means to him, then that's what it is. So. Yeah. Okay. So then we meet Chief Bogo, and he is voiced by Idris Elba, and he is very practical. He's a very pragmatic guy, and he doesn't even want to introduce Judy to the group, but he's that way with everybody. That's one I think that makes his character kind of likable, is that that this is just him. This is the way he is. And he gives Judy, he says he doesn't want, he really didn't want Judy as part of his officers, and he gives her parking duty. What did you think about Chief Bogo?
I really liked his character, and he seemed like I feel like I came to know him over the course of the movie, Like, my opinion of him at the end of the movie was way different than it was at the beginning. And I think that's kind of what the filmmakers intended. you to think, intended you to feel. But I like this character. I think Idris Elba was like a perfect choice for voice casting with him because he has one of those voices, kind of like James Earl Jones or somebody like that, that just commands respect, and authority. And
yeah,
I don't know, he's just like a very respectable guy. And like you said, he's very blunt with Judy, but he's blunt with everybody. He treats everybody that way. It reminds me of a line in that movie, another cop movie, Dirty Harry, when they're talking about Clint Eastwood's character, and somebody says, he's not prejudiced, he hates everyone equally. Something like that. And I don't think Chief Bogo hates anyone in the department, but he just treats everyone with that very, very blunt, straightforward way.
Yeah, and he's a busy guy.
Yeah.
And he's trying to solve these cases. And, it's a nice contrast to, it kind of reminds me a little bit, I love the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And on that show, you have kind of the gruff, you have Ed Asner playing Lou Grant, who's kind of is very similar character, where you have Judy Hopps kind of similar to Mary in that show. Kind of, it's a similar dynamic where she's spunky and she'll speak up for herself, but she's also sort of shy in a certain way. And the first episode of Mary Tyler Moore, Lou Grant says to her, "You've got spunk. You've got spunk." And she says, "Yes," she's all happy. And he says, "I hate spunk." I feel like that's kind of similar to Chief Bogo and Judy. So Judy gets sent on parking duty. And it is sort of interesting. They have this sort of affirmative action element kind of in with her getting as part of this small mammal initiative, which I thought was kind of interesting for Disney to tackle. And so she's out giving parking tickets. She's trying to do her best. And she meets Nick Wilde. Now and then we get the scene of the popsicle hustle. I'll call it that. So Nick, he's at this elephant ice cream store, which is sort of strange. I feel like that you would have in Zootopia, which is supposed to be this utopia, you have a store that only serves ice cream to elephants. Sort of strange, but so they don't want to serve him a popsicle. But then Judy comes in and says, like, you have to serve him a popsicle. And she ends up buying the popsicle for Nick. And I do feel like this is where my Republican friends got annoyed with this movie. That they said that some of my Republican friends claimed that, oh, this is, Disney preaching about, the whole controversy of people not wanting to make cakes for gay couples or things like that, that this is somehow a similar type situation, that we reserve the right to refuse service to whoever we want. And I think that, I don't know, I guess I can see their point, but I think that they're just trying to show that Nick that he's quick on his feet and that he's a smart guy and that he is able to get this popsicle. I don't know. I don't think that Disney is trying to talk about gay marriage. I really don't. But I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about that whole scene as far as the setup of Nick Wilde's character and sort of this dynamic as far as the messaging? What did you think about it?
I liked it a lot. Like, when I first saw the movie, I thought that the first act went on, like, way too long. Like, introducing all the characters and everything. Mm-hmm. But now, looking back, I don't really think it goes on too long, because I don't really know how I would cut it down. I think everything is needed in it, and I like how you get to see this is what Nick Wilde does. This is kind of his, I guess, modus operandi. I guess you might say, like, this is how he works. And I like how you get to see that. You get to see him in action as opposed to, like, hearing about him, like, at the police department, like, pulling out his file or something. Because it could have easily gone that way, too.
Right. And it's trying to make Judy personally invested kind of in Nick's story from the very beginning. I mean, she has paid for the pop. She gives him this pep talk about how great, he can do anything, and, gives him the sticker and all this stuff. And then she finds out that she was, scammed. So it's just trying to show the character of her sort of confronting her sort of naive ideas about the world, I guess. And so then we see it's the beginning of her sort of growth as a character.
Yeah. And I thought the con was really cool. I like Finnick, his partner, a lot.
It's so funny.
I loved how they got the deepest voice actor they could find for this fox that looks like this real little kid, like this toddler looking fox. It is like this guy with his real deep voice, I liked him a lot.
Yeah, I really like later when he says, yeah, she totally played you. That's really good. I like that. Yeah, I really thought that was funny. I did. And I don't know, there's just something sort of charming about Nick's character from the beginning. He kind of, it's almost like a character like a Barney on How I Met Your Mother or something like that. Like they're not really, they're kind of doing bad things, but they just do it with a certain swagger and a certain panache that just makes them kind of likable.
Yeah, it's basically the character that Eddie Murphy played all through the 1980s.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. Because I was thinking about movies like Lethal Weapon and 48 Hours. This movie is kind of references itself from. I was thinking, this is just like Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours. He's a crook, but he's like a slick crook with a sense of humor. He's really witty.
Right.
Like a street hustler. And that's the same character he played in Trading Places in the 80s. And basically every movie in the 80s he was in. So that's what I thought.
So Judy ends up going on a race or following this weasel that has stolen something. She sees a bag from this florist, and she chases him, and you get a great sequence with particularly them running through Rodentia, which I loved. Rodentia, I thought that was adorable. It was so cute. And there's a sequence where they're using basically using cars as roller skates, which is really, really good. And it's just that whole, I loved that chase. I thought it was so fun. And you do see this little mouse that Judy saves from, I guess it's not a mouse, they're Arctic shrews, but anyway, you see this mouse-like character that Judy saves from getting hit by a big donut. And that comes in later on in the story. And I just thought that, I don't know, what do you think of that whole sequence?
I thought it was really clever too. I was tense that whole time they were in Rodentia. I'm don't step on her.
Yeah.
Because it's naturally they all go into a panic and they're running everywhere, So
it's become a monster movie all of a sudden, like Godzilla with Judy. I thought that was so fun.
And I thought it was neat how they set up two plot points that come into play later on in the movie, and they're pretty important ones, but you don't notice that they are because they play them off as jokes, like that girl that she saves, and also when she sees what Duke Weaselton, I guess, is really his name in this one, as opposed to Frozen. But when she looks in the bag, all this for a bag of moldy onions, And it's as it turns out, those moldy onions turn out to be really important later on.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we should mention the Frozen joke that we get when she's with Chief Bogo after, because he's very upset with her about having caused all of this chaos and everything, and abandoning her post. And I like that he says, it's not about what you want to do, it's about what you are capable of doing. And it's not like we can sing a song and dance a dance and everything will just be okay. Sometimes you need to let it go.
Yeah.
That was funny. I thought that was funny. I don't know. What do you think of the humor as far as those kind of jokes? Like I said, I feel like a lot of the jokes were sort of more meant for the adults, but not in a tawdry kind of wink wink kind of way, but just in a sense of I don't know. I thought they were just more for what adults would understand.
Yeah, I see that. I like how the jokes don't really call attention to themselves for the most part. They're just kind of woven into the movie. And like when they do call attention to themselves, it's because they're really strong jokes that could stand on their own. Like the bootleg movie joke, I thought was really good.
Yeah, like, well, you can definitely see Rich Moore's. Sorry. You can definitely see Rich Moore's Simpsons background in the humor, I feel like, because there are so many of the. Because some people say, "Oh, well, it's going to get dated really quickly," but I don't think it will, because first of all, something like The Godfather, I mean, that's never going to get dated. Like that movie is just always going to be part of cinema, so. That part will hold up, I think. But also, as far as things like Uber and some of that stuff that was more modern, that's a background joke. That's kind of like in The Simpsons when you'll have the Marge and Homer driving through Springfield and you see background jokes.
Yeah.
On the marquee or things like that, and so it doesn't really date the film if a background joke isn't relevant anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if a primary joke that they're actually vocalizing or it's a big gag in the film, but like something like a sloth being slow, like that scene, I don't see what would become dated about that. So I don't think it will become dated. I don't know. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like the only joke I could see potentially becoming dated is going back to like the bootleg movie scene. Like I've got movies that aren't even released yet.
Yeah.
That's the only one I could potentially see becoming dated, but most of them, no. Yeah.
I guess the app jokes could maybe become a little dated with the Gazelle app, but I still feel like it's sort of a background joke.
I just gotta say that Disney has to make that app because there's a market for it. People like me.
I know. I'd buy it. I thought it was great.
That's another like very subtle joke that I like. Was like Gazelle's recording for that. It's like real sultry at first, and then when it says the person's name, it's like very robotic.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're an awesome dancer, Officer Clawhauser. It made me laugh like every time.
And I like that. Yeah, I like that Chief Bogo still used his official name. Like it was. I don't know. That was funny. Chief Bogo, you're. So basically, while Judy is getting braided, I guess, by Chief Bogo, this woman named Emma Otterton comes in, and I do think they could have been a little more creative with the names, but it's no big deal. So Emma Otterton comes in, and her husband has been missing for 10 days, and she's very, very upset. We know that 14 predators have been reported missing, and so Judy hears the story and she says, I will find him. I will, because she doesn't want to be doing parking meter duty, and so she agrees, and Miss Otterton's very happy, but then Chief Bogo is very upset. And he gives her 48 hours that she can solve this case and find Mr. Otterton. And that's when she sees, all she has is a picture. She's very clever. I really liked how smart Judy was. And she sees that Emmett is eating a popsicle that Nick made, and she sees that Nick is in the picture. So she goes and she has a lead. So she goes and finds Nick, and she kind of hustles him. This is where we get that scene where I said that the bat or whatever kind of character that is, and he says, "You've been played."
Yeah.
So she hustles Nick and gets him to help her, and they become this kind of duo for the rest of the movie. And that's when he takes her to this magic oasis naturalist spa where Emmett Otterton was a frequent attendee, and we get I forget the character's name, I forgot to write that down, but we get the Shaggy I can't, you know, the character. And it turns out this is a nudist colony, whatever. And I don't know, what did you think about that whole scene? Did you think it was funny? Did you like it?
I thought it was funny. I think that's another subtle joke for the parents. Like, even the voice casting of that part was Tommy Chong. And I was thinking, that is him. Like, he didn't have to do any acting for that. Because that's just who he is that kind of guy.
Right.
And I thought the voice acting was what really, well, first the animation, I guess, stood out to me in that. Like, the way his fur is all matted, and you see all the flies and all the dust.
Oh, yeah.
Coming off of it, you know. But I think the voice acting is what really stands out to me in that scene. Like, especially Jennifer Goodwin as Judy. She's like talking, like real serious, like, oh, and you are naked, you know, when he first stands up. He's like, oh yeah, sorry, yeah, I forgot to tell you about that, you know.
Yeah.
It's not the way she delivers that line. And the girls are like all serious, so like all shocked all of a sudden. I think that's what really makes the joke work.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's just sort of held just long enough to feel like a little bit awkward in the way that they're sort of posed and stuff, even though it seems like, of course, pigs don't wear clothes, like, but in this world, like, it did feel kind of racy, and it was so funny. I agree. I thought it was hilarious. And and I do agree on the voice casting throughout the whole film, but Jennifer Goodwin was a brilliant choice for Judy Hopps. I mean, she's just so relatable, and I mean, I love her from Once Upon a Time. And in that show, she's also very sincere and relatable and everything. And I think that she was such a smart choice. And I think that Jason Bateman as Nick was also brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant voice casting. And I do appreciate that. I appreciate when an animated film cares more about the voice casting for the character than the celebrityness of it. You know, like they could have gotten, I don't know, Brad Pitt or something like that. But I think that Jason Bateman was just perfect choice.
In all fairness, I can kind of see Brad Pitt doing a good job with that part with Nick Wilde. But that's just me, maybe.
He probably could. But I think, because he was good in Megamind, but I just think they was just nailed it. They nailed it with the voice casting. And I agree also in just the fur and all of these animals, but in the way that you get the details of the flies in this scene. But I don't know, I thought the character design was great in this movie. Okay, so let's keep going. There's so much in this film. Okay, so then they get a clue to go to Tundra Town, and they find the limo, and first they get a clue, and they get the license plate, and that's where we go to the DMV, and we meet Flash. And what's interesting about this scene is I thought, they completely spoiled it in the trailer, but it's actually, there's a little more to it than in the trailer. There's a little bit more dialogue. There's a little bit more going on. And so I don't know. What did you think? Did you feel like the trailer spoiled that scene, or was it still funny for you?
Not really. I think it was still funny. Like, well, for one thing, that's one of my favorite. I don't know if it's a joke, but I just want to mention that lady pig who's getting her driver's license photo taken. I love the expressions on her face when they see it. It's one of my favorite parts of that. But anyway, I think that I could see how it's different from the trailer, but I think it's different in the editing. Like, I think they left more spaces, like more space between the lines, and I think the timing is what makes that work. Like, you can see Nick, like, waiting for just the right moment to say, hey, Flash, you want to hear a joke? You know, he's just waiting until he's almost done, you know?
Yeah, he only has one more number to put in. I thought it was actually much funnier in the movie than in the trailer. I really did.
So, And I think it's the timing that was different, you know?
Yeah, and I do happen to love sloths. I actually have a sloth necklace. And I appreciated the sloth scenes. I thought that was funny. And you know, people could say, well, is it sort of a stereotype? But sloths are slow. Like they walk slowly, so like, you know, like it works. So anyway, and so they get done, and it's taken the whole day to get the driver's license from Flash. And so they end up getting to Tundertown, and they find this limo that was on the driver's license, and it's clear that Mr. Alderson was there, and that there was some kind of attack that has happened. And they end up getting found by these two henchmen, these polar bear henchmen. And there's another joke that I could see people saying it was ruined by the trailer, but I didn't think it was, where they come up and they're meeting this big crime lord, Mr. Big. And you see all these different, the gag is all these different polar bears come in. Is that Mr. Big? Is that Mr. Big? And Nick is sitting there like, and and anyway, and you see that Mr. Big is really this Arctic shrew, which I found out that it's actually, like, I guess, a super mean animal. Because I thought it was a mouse at first, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so it's obviously this huge joke about the Godfather. And
with the guy doing like a perfect Marlon Brando.
So funny. They did such a good job with that, and I just thought it was so funny. Like you gave me a skunk rug, and my grandma was buried in the skunk rug.
My grandma was very insulted.
My I was buried in the skunk rug. That was probably the biggest laugh of the whole movie for me, was the skunk rug. and Nick's like, I can get you more rugs. I have more rugs. Why would you do that to me? You know, I don't know. That was so funny. I invite you into my home. And it turns out that the little the shrew, I guess, that the mouse that she saved from the donut is the daughter of Mr. Big. So that's where it all kind of comes full circle. And so he doesn't ice them, which I thought was a really funny concept too, the icing. Yeah. That was very funny. And so he agrees to help them, and you get this great gag with they go to his daughter. It's his daughter's wedding. Dad, you promised not to ice anybody for my wedding. So funny. And you see the polar bears are surrounding the wedding, and it's like on this like little table, and I don't know, I thought that was very funny that you get that perspective of them sort of watching over this wedding, and it totally looked like the wedding in The Godfather. It, you know, with like the type of hats they were wearing and just other stuff. It was, I thought, really funny.
Yeah, I thought it was too. Like, and I really like the setup going into that scene, like the limo when they're checking it out. And I like how Nick's demeanor totally changes when he realizes whose limo this is. You know, it's like, oh, wait a minute, we gotta get out of here like fast. You know. But they don't get out fast enough, of course. And it's like, I don't know, and I like I think what makes that joke funny, that, Daddy, what did we say? You know, I think it was funny is that it's like this really intense scene, but then you see, and then you see that this more domestic part of it, and you see how he interacts with his daughter, compared to like, honey, I have to, Daddy has to. You know? Yeah,
I thought it was really funny. And I haven't seen I've seen The Godfather a couple times. It's not like I'm some expert on it, but it seemed like a really funny homage. Like I said, even down to like the hats and the way that it was staged and everything was right on. And so then we get into the actual sort of meat of the case, I feel like, at this point. So he gives her the clue. He says, oh, well, he didn't attack. He went crazy, this Emmett Otterton. And so he says, go talk to that he had known Emmett for years, that he's his florist, and we've had many worked with each other for years, and so he sends them to go talk to the driver. And we start to learn that basically these characters are these predators are becoming savage. And so that's become sort of the main sort of meat of the case of why are these characters becoming savages and reverting back to their animalistic nature. And so some liberals, and this is sort of, I've said some of the things that the hardcore Republicans don't like, and now here's some things the hardcore Democrats don't like. And this idea that because if they're trying to make sort of this idea of this racial metaphor of that your minority is the predators, right? And people are going to be scared of what's different and scared of the minority, scared of whatever, then it is a little bit like that. There's nothing about say there's nothing about, say, a Muslim person that makes their DNA, like their history back thousands of years, that has sort of a savage underpinning to their ethnicity. Okay. And you could kind of make that claim that this movie is saying that, like, that the DNA of the predators was scary, but now they've civilized themselves. And that's not obviously that's not true about different races. Like, there's nothing that was like anciently savage about a particular race or ethnicity in the human world. Okay, so obviously that's not true. I could see that complaint, but I think it's overthinking it. I think this is a message for children. Like, calm down. I don't know. And you also so anyway, that's just sort of my little stance on that. But I can see their point, but I don't know. I just don't think that to me, it's kind of like picking apart a nursery rhyme, or a nursery rhymes type story where there's a specific message that you could say, like, well, how would that work? Or how would that be? And it's like, this is a story meant to teach a message to little children. Like, it's not a treatise on philosophy and whatever. So I don't know, maybe I'm giving excuses, but that's kind of how I felt about it. I don't know. What do you think?
Like, I didn't see that at all. Like, I just saw the animals going savage thing as part of the mystery, just part of the story, not part of the message of the movie, Yeah. And, like, I guess the main thing I took from those savage animals going savage scene it was mostly from a technical standpoint. I like how those scenes were shot and edited differently from, like, any other scene in the movie. Like, they felt like a horror movie almost, Like, I thought those scenes were, like, not, like, I wasn't scared by them, but I'm a horror movie fan. I like to see how they work, how they put them together. Not like the real gory ones, of course, but anyway.
They're really scary. I mean, there's some moments where kids are going to be, like, 5 and under are going to be scared.
Like, especially because you can see what the panther was like before, before he went savage, and he's like, and all of a sudden he's like totally different, Like,
and it comes right up to the screen, like, Brah!
Yeah, exactly.
It's scary for a little kid.
Yeah, and I guess that was what I took from that too, like how they use, like, the light and the shadow. Like, I think that Zootopia really used, like, lights and shadows and stuff well, like, all through the movie. But especially in those scenes, they kind of use that to scare the audience the way a horror movie would, And that's
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I felt that, especially when they got to the rainforest district, I felt like there was just something really, again, especially in the 3D, it just was so immersive, and it just felt like this film noir kind of world. I felt like, especially in that world.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do find out in this setting that in the sequence that Nick was judged by, he wanted to be in the scout troop, and he had this experience where he was very, very excited as a little kid, and he goes down and they basically treat him horribly. They put this muzzle around him. They say that how could he ever think that he could be part of this troop? And this is the my hardcore Republican friends, say, oh, they're just taking a jab at the Boy Scouts and there's some of their policies. I'm like, oh, okay. But I think that, I don't know. I just didn't think of that. I didn't bother me, but anyway, and I do think it's sort of funny that there are no adults at this Boy Scout thing. Like, this is this weird scouting thing, but anyways, this is the situation that really impacted Nick, and you get the softer side of Nick, that he is basically putting up this cool man front in order to protect himself from getting hurt like he had gotten hurt as a kid, which I thought was really moving and really good. And you see this point where when he shares that story, where Nick and Judy really bond as a couple, and like she puts her hand on his, and says, oh, Nick, I think she actually says. And he basically says, I decided then that if people are only going to see me as a fox, then that's what I was going to be. Which I thought was actually a really good, beautiful message, because there is something to the fact that, like, if people are only going to see a certain person as a ditz or a brainiac or as a, whatever, then that's what they're going to be. And if you don't if nobody believes in you, if nobody thinks you can be something better, then that's what you're going to be most of the time.
Yeah.
Unless you're somebody like Judy, who's just like, screw you all. I'm going to be whatever I want to be.
Yeah.
So I liked that scene a lot. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the more powerful scenes in the movie, and it was a scene where I really started to care about Nick. Like, I liked his character, but because I like that kind of character, like in every movie, I like those kind of witty street hustler type characters.
Yeah.
But that was a scene where I really started to care about him, because I thought about, boy, that's a traumatic experience. That would be a traumatic experience for anyone to go through. That would affect anyone really strongly. And I think it's almost as intense as the scenes when the animals go savage in its own way. Because you see how he's all excited, and then all of a sudden it like turns like this really dark, really scary for him, really scary thing,
Well, and yeah, it just gives an added depth to sort of everything that he's done up until that point. He's not a shallow character anymore. And I said it just builds this bond between the two of them, because now they both had this bullying experience that we've seen in the film. So I think a lot of kids, I definitely would have been able to relate to that very strongly, because I had bullying experiences as well growing up. So I would have really liked that. So, okay. One thing I wondered is, why do you think that they made the predators such a small part of the population? Because it sure doesn't seem like that when you look at the movie itself, and they say that prey outnumber predators 10-1. And it seems like it would have been better, I feel like, in their metaphors and in their analogies to be more like 60-40, or I don't know, like maybe that's just nitpicking, but I felt like it sure didn't seem like there were that few of predators within the story. And I don't know, I just thought, I wonder why they did that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That seems strange to me too, because it didn't seem that way throughout the movie. I don't know.
I guess they were just trying to, because it does seem strange if you have 10% of the population, that why would the prey be so sort of mistreated as far as Bellwether and some of the other characters? Like, if it's 90% population, like, I don't know, it's just interesting that they did that. But Okay, so let's keep going. So Judy is able to find all of the predators that have been missing, and she becomes kind of a little bit of a hero, and the mayor ends up getting arrested, and she gets on this news conference. And this, I thought, was a really effective segment of the film. This idea of sort of the way that Nick tells her to talk in the press conference was hilarious. That I really liked. That just answer any question with another question. and yeah, which I hear that all the time in interviews and things like that, when people, even just, I'm a huge Survivor fan, but even just the exit interviews from Survivor, and people say, well, why'd you make this decision in the game? And the person will say, well, why did I, what was my, and they'll say, was that a good decision? I don't know if it was, or so they'll like ask themselves a question, and you're like, I thought that was really funny, and a kind of a clever jab at media, and sort of one of those more jokes for adults.
Yeah.
That was funny. And so she says in her, so the reporter asks, why are all of these savages predators? And Judy, trying to be sort of, in her mind, stating the facts of the case, she says it's in their DNA. What I mean is, thousands of years ago, predators survived through their aggressive hunting instincts. For whatever reason, they seem to be reverting back to their primitive savage ways. And like I said, this is where some of the racial metaphors get a little muddy, but oh well. So to their savage ways, it is possible there could be more attacks. So we must be vigilant, and we at the ZPD are prepared and here to protect you. And this, I thought, was such an interesting message within the movie that I almost thought was more interesting than the prejudice message, was this idea of sort of protection and fear being used as a tool to sort of manipulate people by the villain, by other things, that you see this great scene later on where, or coming up, where this predator sits next to this woman with a bunny with her child on the bus, and you see her move because and so I thought you see her move her child away from this predator, and I thought that was a really great image. This idea of, so we hear about something happening, say 9/11 or something like that, and maybe because we're scared, we see a Arab man, and maybe some of us have that instinct to, oh, we got to scoot over, which obviously is wrong, but I just thought that was really interesting to think about. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I got that message, I guess, a little later on in the movie. We'll talk about that. More towards the climax of the movie, I got that fear being used as a tool, I guess.
Yeah.
I got that a little bit later on, but I thought that press conference scene was really effective. Obviously the prejudice message is what they were going for, but I thought that was really powerful, especially coming off of that scene where Nick and Judy bonded. And you keep seeing how Nick is reacting to what she's saying. And I keep thinking, Judy, stop talking. You're just making things worse. Like with everything you say. So
and you see her sort of innocence, and I did love how this movie, there is no paragon of virtue. There's no character that is perfect, and I liked that. To me, that tempered the preachiness a lot. Like, there's some people complained the movie was preachy. I didn't feel like, because I felt like every character was flawed in their own way. Like, if you go to, say, a faith-based film, one of the problems those films tend to have is they have a character that's a paragon of virtue, and they have a character that's an evil atheist. And you didn't have that in this movie. Like, everybody was sort of flawed and trying to figure this out on as best they could. And so Nick is very offended by the press conference. And he says, this is, I thought, great writing here. He says, "Oh, I think you said plenty." And then he repeats back what she said about the DNA and everything. And he says, "Are you serious?" And she says, I just stated the facts of the case. It's not like a bunny could go savage. He says, right, but a fox could. And she says, stop it. You're not like them. He says, oh, there's a them now. That was really good, I thought.
Yeah. And it's like that kind of a joke, but kind of not thing that people say, like, oh, some of my best friends are black or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Or Muslim or Mexican or whatever it is.
Them.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and how easy it is to sort of categorize people that, like we all do it, whether we like to admit it or not, we all do it to a certain extent. You know, that whether it's even not even necessarily race, but whether it's religion or whether it's, you know, we do classify people by different groups and put labels on people. That's just human nature. And we do. And so I thought that was just brilliant. Oh, there's a them now. Okay. So let's see here. So then we get a little scene. We see that there's sort of panic. You see the news reporters reporting about additional savages, predators going down. And we also see Giselle as a sort of celebrity call for peace. And she says, this is not the Zootopia that I know. And I thought that was good. I liked it. And so Judy is now treated as this hero, but she feels bad because she's just betrayed her friend. And so, but she gets this chance to have a promotion, and she goes meets with Mayor Bellwether and Chief Bogo, and I loved it. She said, and Clawhauser is sent down to records, which I thought was a moving sequence when that happens. And anyway, so she says, I think I've broken Zootopia, which is interesting, which was a moving and just sort of moment for her, where this character is sort of become a grown-up, like seeing the world as it really is, not as what she hoped it would be. I thought that was really good. And Chief Bogo says, don't give yourself so much credit. The world has always been broken. That's why we need good cops. That's great writing there, I think.
Yeah, it is.
The world has always been broken. A little bit of cynical from Disney, but it's true. But it works with his character, because he's kind of a cynical character. Okay, so then we get her going back to work at her farm. She's at the stand with her parents. And I have to say, I do love Bonnie Hunt, and I forgot to write down the male voice actor for her parents. I thought they were really funny. And so she meets Gideon again on the farm stand, which is a little bit of a plot hole because she's only been gone like not very long. I mean, she's only working for 48 hours and however long the training took. And so it sort of doesn't really make sense that she would have no idea that her parents were working with this Gideon guy on the stand. Like, this is sort of a plot hole. But I think it works. And she's talking to Gideon, and he basically says that I'm sorry for the way I behaved in my youth. I had a lot of self-doubt, and it manifests itself in the form of unchecked rage and aggression. I was a major jerk. I thought that was really good.
And it's like, I like the way that the voice actor delivers it to whoever that was, because you can tell he's trying to remember what like his therapist told him. I had a lot of unchecked rage and a lot of self-doubt. You know? Yeah.
Well, and I also like, too, the way that she sort of sees her parents, I think, in this new light. She's like, wow, that's really cool, guys. So she sees that they are better people than maybe she'd give them credit for, which I liked that. You know, like I said, these are nobody is a paragon of virtue. Nobody is a horrible, horrible person, really. I guess the villain at the end is, but I mean, even she kind of has her reasons. I thought that was really cool as far as good and bad within this story, that it was a little more nuanced And so, anyway, she also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think that was one of the other really powerful messages in the movie, but it's really only in the movie for this one scene, is that people do change, you know?
Yeah.
People, because like in Frozen, like I like Frozen for the most part, but there's one line in that Song of the Troll scene that I really hate. It's that line that's like, we know that you can't really change him because people don't really change. And every time I see the movie, I'm like, that is not true. Untrue. I get angry every time I see that. And I feel like this is kind of Disney's way of making up for that. You know, it's like, you know, people really can change, you know, especially as they get older and they get more mature, you know.
Well, and the change isn't necessarily this big moment like you get with Frozen, which is powerful and I like it, but that in a more sort of realistic non-fairy tale setting, that this is the change happens in little things, like in a relationship with a vendor for their market, you know, like that they are expanding who they know. So I think that that's really powerful too, that it's not always in protests and big speeches and stuff, but sometimes it's just, I'm going to work with this person. I'm going to make this person a cake. I'm going to go to their wedding. I'm going to, you know, like a little thing, but is actually quite powerful.
Yeah.
So, okay. So then she finds out about the night howlers. And it turns out this flower caused her uncle to go crazy when he ate it, to go savage. And she goes, oh, my bunnies can go savage. Holy cow. You know, which is, if you're going kind of the metaphor, like, I mean, anybody can be a terrorist, you know, like Timothy McVeigh, like white people are terrorists, like people are bad people, like it's not just a particular type of person or particular, you know, particular ethnicity or race. So, you know, she sort of realizes that, and she zooms back, she finds Nick, and she tells Nick, like, I'm just a dumb bunny and I've been wrong and I'm sorry. And I love that sequence. I think it is so sweet that they have this moment where she gets upset and it made me tear up. It made me cry. I thought it was really good. You know, that he's angry with her, but then he's able to forgive her, and he says, "Oh, you bunnies, you're so emotional."
Yeah.
That was really, really good. I thought just a really tender scene. Okay. Okay. So we have to assume that this is a unknown drug, right? Because otherwise they would know, like, oh, this is what's going on. Like, do you think this is just something that sort of the country people know about, but like the city people aren't aware of this plant?
I would think so, probably, because obviously the people who are harvesting it have to know where it's from somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
So
because I mean, just nobody, none of the police, none of the media, nobody seems to be aware of this plant and it causing these savage things, except for her parents. And so anyway, there's sort of now this drug element of the movie, and some people are saying that there's a drug message. I didn't find that to be the case. I felt like it was just an element of the story. I didn't feel like it was particularly anti-drug message. I don't know. But anyway, so they are able to find this drug lab that the flowers are being grown in, and then they're being made. And I don't watch Breaking Bad, but I certainly have seen enough of the imagery and everything. I started it like 3 times, and it's just too cynical, and it's just not my thing. But anyway, and so there's this blue liquid that they make into these little droplets. And then they're able to shoot the droplets onto the person, and evidently just skin contact is enough to make the person go savage. And so there's this sheep named Doug who is making these droplets, and they are able to find this out, and they end up, there's this whole segment where they take possession of the train, of the car, I guess you call it, and there's this whole action sequence with the sheep and the car and the train and everything. I don't know. What did you think of that whole sort of segment?
I thought it was cool. I thought that they really used like I said before, like light and shadow really well, and also color really well too. I thought that whole drug lab train thing looked really cool, you know.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I thought the sequence itself was cool. I don't know. I don't really remember a whole lot about that particular part of the movie, besides that I thought it was cool.
Yeah, know? I thought it was really pretty exciting. Like when the sheep like goes onto the glass and is like, oh, you know, and you see him like sticking out, and then Judy is really clever about the way that she's able to get the sheep out of the train and able to maneuver things, and then it ends up all like exploding. But Nick is able to take the gun, at least save that. And so I thought it was a really fun action scene. I really liked it. And it also does have little moments of humor for the adults. Like you see a joke about Jesse and Walter coming, and that's from Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
So and of course the uniforms that they wear was also similar to what they wear in Breaking Bad. So I thought that was kind of funny. Like that might not age super well, but again, it's a background joke. It's not a main joke.
Yeah.
So okay, let's keep going. We're almost done. So then we get the sequence where the villain is revealed. So they've got this gun. They're through to the Natural History Museum of Natural History, which, like, in Zootopia, it would just be the Museum of History. It wouldn't be the Museum of Natural History, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyway, so they're in the museum, and there's blueberries that Nick has from the farm, and he's eating the blueberries. And they start to get chased, and they realize that Assistant Mayor Bellwether, who was seemed to be just this sweet, innocent, unassuming person throughout most of the movie, that it turns out that she is actually the real mastermind behind everything, and she's out to get all the predators and get everybody scared of predators and get them sort of removed from Zootopia is her goal. And I don't know, what did you think about the big reveal of Mayor Bellwether as the villain? And somebody pointed out to me that this is the 4th movie in a row from Disney that's had a surprise villain, as opposed to like in Snow White or something where there's just the villain from the very beginning. And what do you think about those kind of things? What do you think about the reveal, and what do you think about the surprise element of it?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to say that I called the lion as part of it. Like, I was like, hey, the lion is part of the plot. I knew that was going to happen. But anyway, I was really surprised. I thought Bogo was going to turn out to be the villain, to be totally honest.
Oh, interesting.
Because I was thinking, like, all the pieces kind of fit together that way. You know, if you think about it, like he doesn't want her to be like an official member of the force. He wants her to be in this publicity unit, you know, to keep her off the case. Like, I think maybe he wants to keep her off the case and stuff like that. Like, I was thinking he was going to be the villain. So I was really taken by surprise by that. Like, I was expecting a surprise villain, but not her, you know?
Yeah.
And this is where I really got that message of using fear as a tactic, you know?
Right.
She talks about what she's going to do. Like, oh, this fox went savage, and he attacked this special jewel of the police force, you know? Like that. And This is when I really got that, even that political vibe I was talking about earlier with certain people who are in the presidential race, or a certain person right now, but who will remain nameless. but I think that really works from both sides of the political spectrum. I think that's why it was neat that it was like someone in politics who was a villain, because I think that that's something that all politicians do at times. Right. They use fear to get what they want across, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that whether it's the fear of sort of they both use the fear of the other side. At the very least, they both use the fear of the other side causing all this horror and destruction and everything like that, when in reality it's like, it's really not that different. I mean, as far as we have a system of checks and balances, we have a system of, we have federalism, that there's not one person that has all of the power. So a lot of the fear, it's not like one person can just, rule everything. It's just, so a lot of that fear is usually unfounded because there's those checks to put things in place. But I agree. I think that that's really true, that it is something that you use fear, and the media does it as well, probably more so than even the politicians themselves, is the media will then take what somebody says and use it as a headline to kind of scare people or to attract people in some way. And so, yeah, I think that's very true. I think that they could have had a more traditional villain, but like I feel like that doesn't really work with a detective story. Like you have to have you can't have a traditional villain in a detective story.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no like real solving of the case.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And I kind of wonder if that's what the lion was, like the mayor was part of the plot for. Because like I love stories like that. Like all mysteries seem to have someone like that,
Yeah.
Like
a red herring for sure.
And speaking of politics, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Speaking of politics, I think the lion is another really good example of that. He gets caught in something bad, but he justifies his actions. Like while he's in prison, he's like, "Yeah, I know I broke the law, but I did it for the good of the people."
Yeah, he's kind of a Nixon type, like I was doing it for the right reasons. So then we basically get the end. Gets the end of Mary Bellwether gets taken, and then Judy ends up becoming kind of a hero. We get this sequence at the end where she is giving a speech at Nick's graduation as a cop, and she gives this long speech, and I guess you could say make a case for it being preachy, but to me it really worked. I thought it was good. She says, and I was able to find it online, so here's what she says. She says, "When I was a kid, I thought Zootopia was this perfect place where everyone got along and anyone could be anything. Turns out real life is a little bit more complicated than a slogan on a bumper sticker. Real life is messy. We all have limitations. We all make mistakes, which means, hey, glass half full, we all have a lot in common. And the more we try to understand each other, the more exceptional each of us will be. But we have to try. So no matter what type of animal you are, from the biggest elephant to our first fox, I implore you to try. Try to make the world a better place. Look inside yourself and recognize that change starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with all of us." So I think that's a really nice message.
Yeah.
Call me crazy. I liked it. It was good. And
I like that.
You can make little arguments, like I said, that some of my hardcore Republican friends have made, some of my hardcore liberal friends have made about some of the messaging. But at its core, I think the children will get a really nice message about trying to understand people that are different than you and trying to... I think that this movie will start a lot of great conversations between families. I can just see over dinner table, them talking about, oh, so-and-so is different than me. So-and-so maybe is in a wheelchair or something like that, and that maybe is, or a little person or somebody that's different. And a little kid is maybe scared about that or nervous or anxious or whatever it might be. And I could see this movie being such a great tool for that a parent pulling out and being like, what did Judy learn about characters that were different? And let's talk about it. And what did she say? And I think that's great. Like a movie can't be everything to everyone and speak about everything. And if all this movie does is have kids talking with their parents about some of these issues, then I think it's a success. I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I don't know, I like that message about change starting with you, because that's been something that's on my mind. It's been on my mind a lot recently. Just, you can't change everything, you know. But if you can look at things from a different perspective, and if you can change yourself, if you can strive to improve yourself, then that makes all the difference. And I like that.
Well, and like I said, even just the change that she saw with her parents, you know, that just working with Gideon and being open-minded, and Gideon changing, and you know, all of that's what is really impactful. You know, that these big politicians or these popular people or these other things, like, that's important, but what really matters is how do we treat each other on a day-to-day basis? Do we love each other? Do we treat each other with respect? You know, that's where we get closer, at least, to this perfect place that she's talked about at the beginning, that that anyone can get along and anyone can be anything. And I think that we are pretty close in our society of a society where anyone can be anything. There are still more monetary divisions, I think, as far as that goes, than others. But man, we're closer than we've been in my lifetime, at least. We keep improving that things that weren't available to certain classes or certain orientations or certain whatever, that now are available to them. So I don't know, I feel like we are getting better, at least, and that's where it starts. And I think that this movie does a good job of portraying that message. And I can see, like I said, I can see people's points on both sides. Like, I'm like, yeah, okay. But for me, it does not affect my enjoyment of the film at all. Because I just think that they're trying to portray this message of understanding and not being afraid and never giving up. Those are the three, I think, big messages to children, and I think they do a great job with that.
Yeah, I think so too.
So, and I think it's really funny. I think it's sort of my final thoughts on the film. I think it's really funny. I think it's beautiful. I love the look of it. I think it has really likable characters. I think that it has that nice message for children. And overall, I think it's really hard to compare musicals and non-musicals for me, because musicals always get the edge because I just love music so much.
Yeah.
But I think it's the best non-musical from Disney since 101 Dalmatians.
I guess I could see that.
That's my opinion. I think it's much... I'm not that high on Wreck-It Ralph. I like it, but I don't love it like other people do. I think this is much stronger than Wreck-It Ralph, and I mean, there's not that many non-musicals, but I think it's the best, in my opinion, since 101 Dalmatians. So, I don't know, what are your sort of final thoughts and takeaways of the film?
I guess I like that it was able to do so many different things that I think it really set out to do. You know, I think it was a nice homage to like those kind of action movies, like 80s action movies. I think Rich Moore and Byron Howard really wanted to do something different, and I think they succeeded with that, doing something different for Disney in that kind of story. But and I thought the characters were really good, and I liked how it was able to like tie in all these jokes and all these action set pieces and all these likable characters and all, and all this action, I guess already. But oh well. I like how they were able to tie that together and also give the audience something to think about. You know, like a lot of things to think about. And
there was never any time when I was bored. I've seen it 3 times and I'm not bored.
Yeah.
Like, they keep it clipping along really well.
Yeah. And I guess that's my final thoughts. I think anything else.
Where would you, as far as in recent films, like, I guess where would you rank it?
I think, like, I'm thinking recent from, like, Tangled on. I think Tangled is still my favorite of all the recent movies, but this might be second, I think. I'm not sure. I haven't really put a lot of thought into where I would rank it, but this might be second to Tangled in terms of recent films, but...
Yeah, like I said, for me, it's just almost impossible to compare a musical with a non-musical, but... Yeah. I really did like it, so I guess it doesn't really matter in the end how you rank it. I liked it. I thought it was great. I gave it an A+ in my review, and I stand by that. I think that the real comparison is, do I like it better than the Lego movie? I think the Lego movie is funnier. I have to say, I did laugh a lot more in the Lego movie, but I think this is better.
Yeah, I will say, I guess not relevant to this is that you mentioned the Lego movie. There are 2 characters in the Lego. Actually, there are 3 that are really, really funny. I think it would be hard to match. Like Liam Neeson's good cop, bad cop. Yeah. I love his character. And then the astronaut, and then Batman. I think it would be hard for any movie to have 3 characters that are as funny as those.
Well, in Lego movie, like the jokes just come and come and come and come and come, and so it's just different than this. But
yeah,
I think this is just got a little more heart, and the characters a little bit more likable and more fleshed out, and so I would give the edge to this. But anyway. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this. And where can people find you? I'll put a link to your Twitter or whatever. But where can people find you?
Just I'm doing some writing. I do it very occasionally on my blog, which is Listelaneous21 at blogspot.com. And so I'm not very steady writing there. I just write there whenever I feel the urge to write there. But I write there, and then I write at the Rotoscopers website, and then on Twitter at SurferJohnny25. So
cool, great. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you joining me to talk about this film, and let's just hope that it can live up to this offering from Disney. I hope we're not going to get a Inside Out Good Dinosaur situation. That's my only, because I loved Good Dinosaur. I think it's massively underrated, but whatever. But I just feel like people loved Inside Out, so they hated on Good Dinosaur, which was a totally different kind of movie. So I hope we don't get that with Moana, which is a totally different kind of movie. And so I hope that people give it a chance. And there's a little bit more time separation between, because this is March and it's all the way until November, whereas Inside Out was June and November, so it's a little different. But anyway, that's my only worry, is that I hope that people give Moana a fair shot, and I hope it's a great movie. I'm really excited for it. But certainly great start for Disney, and it's been a very great start to 2016 animation, aside from Norm of the North.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you all later.
All right. Thanks.